Hey, how's it going, everyone? Happy New Year. It feels great to be back here again. Let's get back to our favorite pastime, petting llama, talking about cognitive functions. And we're going to talk about the ISFJ's cognitive functions, and I'm going to do this way differently than a lot of other people. And so for that reason, let me preface that I'm not a professional, and my spirit animal is the onion from Shrek. And so please take my info with a grain of salt. Typically, I see cognitive functions and they look like this, or most recently this. I think any one of these will work. I think any personality system can work well for anyone here. It's just that mine's ended up looking like this. This is a conglomerate of every instance of conflict and cooperation I've ever experienced. It looks like I dropped my Skittles into a puddle. Anyways, where do I start? Let's start with the dominant function, my dominant function, introverted sensing. Here, my guy is holding on to some documents and he's looking pretty damn cool about it too. That's because to the SI dominant, SI is effortless and always available to use at our leisure. It doesn't come without its setbacks though. I mean, admittedly, we stay really attached to familiar ideas. This is where we get those labels such as traditionalist, stubborn, non-imaginative. The last one I really don't understand. I mean, just because your imagination doesn't look like the artwork for a freaking Coldplay album doesn't mean I'm lacking in that area, but that's another topic for another time. It's just that the SI dominant happens to pay attention to a few ideas at a time, those ideas stemming from the concrete and sensory experience, and then favors the conclusion of a thought by examining those ideas rather intensely. Now, speaking of concrete and sensory, this is where extroverted sensing comes into play. I don't find it too difficult to use extroverted sensing, at least in my cognitive stack. These two go hand in hand. What typically tends to happen is that I take what's present and what's familiar and then compare it to the things I've already experienced. I suppose because I'm so occupied with the familiar, if I come across something that's out of the ordinary or yet to be proven, then there would be some alarms going off in my head. This is when I become too attached to introverted sensing, and this is where training my intuitive functions serves to be very valuable in some instances. So here's extroverted intuition. When I hang out with my ENFP friend, and he takes the lead role in figuring out what to do, we usually get in trouble. But because he's so nonchalant and so cool about it all the time, it signals to me that, dipping into chaos is way less threatening than played out in my mind. And, I learn a hell of a lot more than if I just stayed into my comfort zone. Introverted intuition, I think, is pretty much what happens when I allow myself to continue to add to my ideas and I don't stop to specify anything. I usually start out with a thought, and then if I allow myself to do so, I will expand upon it, and I keep going until it becomes unrecognizable by any conventional means. I suppose what I mean by that is here is an object, and then here is the same object after using introverted intuition. The catch is that I'm not always aware that I'm using introverted intuition as it's happening. And here's introverted thinking. I'm not sure if all ISFJs can easily use introverted thinking, but this is where I organize my thoughts and then refine some kind of system of understanding. For me, SI and TI work in tandem, TI usually playing the supporting function. And this is where I find myself reflecting and writing a lot. And this is where I also gain brand new ideas, brand new insights, just by changing the progression of my thoughts. And then here's extroverted feeling. Extroverted feeling is what seems to give my SI-TI tandem a people-oriented slant. Whenever I ruminate over ideas, it usually addresses the question of how it would affect others, or maybe what would it be like if this person listened to me speak my thoughts, most of which is not easily transmissible. Or what's gonna make other people feel at ease without losing the gravity of what I want them to hear. And then introverted feeling is something that I've learned to harness over time. It was one thing to be in touch with my own ideas and how I refine them. It's another thing to become aware of and develop my individual values and my sense of identity and establish important boundaries and handle my increasingly insatiable desire for authenticity. And it's another thing to recognize how this will conflict with the values of a consensus, which is why you see FE and FI sort of duking it out over here. Extroverted thinking is a motherfucker. I mean, I can use it if I have to put together something or if I have to follow new protocol really quickly. But look at these two functions over here. Like, at least FE and FI are wearing gloves. FE and TE are just bare knuckle boxing. This is me portraying how much they hate each other. I seem to have a slightly easier time accessing extroverted thinking through introverted thinking more than extroverted feeling. My problem with activating extroverted thinking is having to momentarily give up a lot to use it. That means throwing out the human element. That means throwing out my tendency to refine my ideas. Essentially taking in the info as it is and without the filter of my own perception. I mean, it can be done, it would just be pretty difficult. And here's the unhealthy version of extroverted intuition when it's suppressed by every other conscious function. It seems to serve as this homeostatic mechanism in case I delve too much into my dominant function, but how it goes about it isn't always healthy. I mean, here you see extroverted intuition giving introverted sensing the guilt trip. He's like,
"Hey, you goddamn bum, what the hell are you doing? Why are you not in outer space right now?"
And then my NE dominant friends would tell me,
"Hey, you goddamn bum, what the hell are you doing?"
But yeah, the emotions that I see myself grappling with when pertaining to extroverted intuition are particularly guilt, anxiety, and regret. And then in a social setting, this is where I become paranoid and a little too attuned to the needs of others. Extroverted sensing is here because this is where I notice the micro expressions of another person's body language. I mean, I can do that even without the anxiety, but you know. And I think that's it. I think that covers a bit of this ISFJ's cognitive functions. Eventually, I'm going to portray the other personality types like this, but first, I have a lot of other videos to get to, some of which will complement this one, but in the meantime, we'll keep in touch. Yes? Okay, cool. Well, have a fantastic day.